I figure that we can start kind of at the beginning with your childhood. Could you describe to me before the war at all?
Before the war,
I
the
believe it
Second
was.
World War. So I was all of 13 years old already. I was born in 38. I remember during the war, my oldest sister, who is Ingrid Richardson, she and I went to the same nursery school, and we were all of maybe 5 years old. That we walked quite a distance because very few people owned cars
Right.
at that particular time. So it was a good walk, but there were sidewalks, and he walked on the sidewalk and so on, so it was kind of safe till now. I'm talking about being wartime. One morning when my older sister and I headed for nursery school, and all of a sudden the alarm sirens went off. And of course we were familiar what that meant. That meant it's a possible airstrike on its way. Well, here we walk on the sidewalk and we're scared still. So my mother, she called the nursery school, and we had not arrived yet. So she was most upset. And so then pretty soon the airplanes started flying over our heads, and that scared just the devil out of us. What are we going to do? We thought they were going to drop a bomb, just right on us, and so on. So somebody came out of the house where we were. I mean, nobody we knew, and we had strict orders for years already, never to go or to talk to strangers. So now here we were making quite a decision. Either just be scared and stand there and cry till our mother came and rescued us, or are we going to disobey their orders and go with them? Well, we did go with them. And luckily that lady was very kind. So anyways, so my mother was not at all upset. I thought we'd get home and get a whipping. So we got home, and she was very happy that we made that decision. But of course, it was going against the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So she made that sure that we understand this was just an exception. Manners and so on were very important at that time in Germany. I mean, children were heard and seen, but very little. It's different now.
So that experience as a child, hearing the air raid site, that must have been very difficult to get through. What kind of gave you hope through that period of your life that things would be better?
At that age, you don't think about future for yourself or anything. You just live in the day. I was not afraid that this war is going to go on forever, but the whole thing was, of course, Hitler was there. He was disliked, hated by so many other countries. So, wherever he was, they tried to get rid of him and throw bombs in the houses, in the towns, the cities, and so on. After the war was finished in 1945, there was a lot of houses, destroyed needlessly, because they never got him, not in Stuttgart where I lived, which was a big city. My father was an engineer working in a company that was manufacturing train engines. In wartime, it was airplanes, fighters, and so on. But so he always had a job. Unfortunately, he was he had to join the army. Every able-bodied man, had to go and help out, trying to help his own country, that you were born in, and so on. But of course, they should have stopped right then and there, but nobody gave up.
So what did your mother do during wartime?
My mother was just a stay-at-home mom. She was a hard worker.
Do you remember the Allied troops did end up taking Stuttgart?
When Stuttgart was occupied by the American army, I mean, they just came because they had no, it was all done and they were expecting to go home, but that was not done immediately. Because my mother spoke fluent English, we got to know quite a few English-speaking being Americans. So we were in the American district from the American Army, who were very, very kind and excellent to the people that lived there. But this is where in that time, we were introduced to English. My mother, in the meantime, found a job working for the American Army because she was so good in English, and she was the organizer to find things for the soldiers, American soldiers, to keep them occupied on weekends in the summertime.
Do you recall about the time that you guys moved to America?
That was in 1955 to Ithaca. Well, my mother worked immediately, got a job as a medical secretary, and then she bought our own house. So then we didn't have to live with my aunt anymore. So we all decided we liked it well enough in America and we stay there.
What was the general feeling of like knowing that you were going to move to a different country?
A little nervous about it because foreign languages was not my favorite.
So where did you were a physical therapist, so where did you go to college for that?
Ithaca College.
Ithaca College?
And it was perfect. It's fantastic, you
Right.
know. And of course now we were in the dating age. So we either dated Cornell University or Ithaca College. Bill's is Ithaca College.
Right. You mentioned Mr. Bill. Mm-hmm. Can you describe when you first met him?
Mr. Bill, Friday evening get together with other students is where we met. He was nice enough, and I liked him and how he thought. So and things went on from there. So in 1961 we got married, and he was working in a practice that was already established in physical therapy.
So after you guys got married, you obviously had kids. What's the biggest lesson that they have taught you, would you say?
To be patient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to be a person, everything had to be done right away.
Right.
Well, that doesn't happen with children.
So looking back now, if you could give yourself advice, maybe to the young couple of Bill and Mickey, what advice would you give them?
Get to know each other the best you can, the pros and the cons, because everybody and human beings have some good points and some bad points. And if they're, as long as there's conversation, talking is so important in a marriage all along, not just when you first get to know each other. Your parents instill values, and the same values that the parents have, and be a good example in a normal and good family that parents need to be, patient and explaining things. I was a big one because they wanted to join some group of something, in high school. And we talked about it. We didn't just say yes or no.
Right.
Talk about it.
Mr. Bill passed 2 years ago now, 2023 of October. Obviously, I've seen it firsthand. It was extremely difficult for you. If somebody were going through the same situation, what kind of advice might you give them to overcome that feeling of grief?
Well, some people go to talk about it and so on and help each other maybe. Now, I needed to do it by myself. I just wanted to be alone, and did a lot of crying. I wasn't ashamed of it because that's all tension, and you got to get rid of that somehow. It really does help that it was his time to go. His number came up heaven, and so But it's hard to change your entire life. That used to be just two of you, and that just takes time. Whatever time it takes, it's not, you can't rush that.
Right.
Time is a big healer. I still miss him. Remember times that we had good times. So, but I mean, at least we had that many years, and it was good many years. We were very grateful, and I'm still now grateful.
As me and my family sat around the ancient wooden kitchen table, the warm smell of spatzel greeted my nose and enticed my stomach. The room was dim, illuminated only by the dull kitchen light above the stove and the flickering orange of the candles. Outside the big glass door I saw darkness, interrupted by floating snowflakes and the occasional headlights of cars coming down the road. The coldness outside only made the kitchen feel more inviting. And then we bowed our heads. I held the wrinkled and warm hand of my neighbor, Mrs. Mickey, as we sat and prayed together before our meal. Amen, we all quietly whispered in unison. As I looked back up, I noticed Mrs. Mickey's husband, Mr. Bill. His hands were shaking ever so slightly, an early sign of the Parkinson's disease that would eventually ravage his body. Mrs. Mickey saw the same thing, and as tenderly as a mother with her child, she helped him fill his plate with the white German noodles. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of silence, Mrs. Mickey broke it and exclaimed Guten Tag, Bon Appetit in German. And as if it were an order by a general given to his soldiers, we all picked up our forks and began eating. When the meal was finished and the kitchen cleaned, we sat on the warm, fluffy couch in the living room. Mr. Bill exchanged stories with my father about hunting and the great outdoors in a shaky voice, and Mrs. Mickey told my mother about how her sons were doing over glasses of red wine. And I sat there in the middle of it all, soaking up each word as if it were gospel. I could not tell you why this night specifically has stayed with me all these years, but I can tell you in that moment I felt at home, even though I was 3 houses down the road. And I am eternally grateful to Mrs. Mickey and Mr. Bill, my third set of grandparents, for making me feel that way.